Tory Lanez will be freed this year. I just want you to know.
So Tory's getting out.
Tory is getting out. That's good. Okay.
And Tory Lanez, convicted of shooting rapper Megan Thee Stallion, sentenced to 10 years in prison.
Tory Lanez is going away for a long time.
They said he was finished. Behind bars, convicted, silenced, erased. Just another name on the list, thrown away by the system. Tory Lanez wasn't just sentenced, he was erased from public sympathy, canceled in real time, turned into a symbol, not of guilt, but of everything the internet needed a villain for. But here's what they didn't know. He didn't fold, he didn't break, he didn't beg, he waited. He watched the public make a spectacle of his pain, and through all of it, he said nothing. Why? Because Tory knew something the world didn't. This story wasn't over, not even close. Then came May 2025. Everything changed. A report hit the internet. Tory Lanez stabbed in prison. Not once, not twice, 14 times, 7 wounds in his back, 4 across his torso, 2 to the back of his head, 1 just beneath his left eye. Both lungs collapsed. He was airlifted to a hospital, hooked to machines, gasping for air. No one expected him to survive. No one expected him to walk again. But he did, and from that moment on, the narrative began to crack, because the same silence that had made him look guilty now started to look like something else. Strength, discipline, dignity, and slowly the public started asking what they were once too afraid to say. Why does this still feel wrong? Why was the evidence never shown? Why does no one seem sure of what really happened? And if Tory Lanez really was the villain, why does the system seem so desperate to keep him quiet while the world thought he was buried? Tory Lanez was building, not on stages, not with albums, but behind the scenes in silence. Because while the media recycled headlines, his legal team was reconstructing a case that had been fractured by bias, omission, and distraction. They weren't just appealing, they were preparing for war. They called it 36 Hours Later, a quiet website, no press, no celebrity rollout, just facts. Sworn affidavits, leaked body cam footage, evidence never shown in court. Testimonies left out of the public narrative. Among them, a bombshell. A statement from Bradley James, a former bodyguard. He claimed he overheard Kelsey Harris confess, twice to firing the weapon, then surveillance footage that contradicted key elements of the prosecution's timeline. And a body cam clip where Megan herself reportedly told officers she had stepped on glass, not been shot. These weren't wild theories. They were tangible, citable, real. And they didn't come from fan accounts. They came from inside the case, from the same system that convicted Tory and now might be starting to expose itself. Could it be that the story the world accepted wasn't just incomplete, but deliberately edited? Because this wasn't just about who fired a gun, it was about who was allowed to speak and who the system chose to silence. When Jason Lee pressed further, trying to understand why Tory would carry such a brutal sentence for something he claimed he didn't do, the answer wasn't legal. It was deeply personal. Tory didn't protect himself, he protected them. Kelsey, the woman his team believes held the gun. Megan, the woman who was shot, and he, the man, caught between both. "I took the rap for Kelsey," he said. "I never wanted her to go to jail, and I never wanted Megan to get hurt." He didn't say this with bitterness, he said it with peace. A man who made a choice fully knowing what it would cost. Because to him, protecting 2 black women, even at the expense of his own freedom, felt like the only path he could live with. And when Jason pushed harder, Tory revealed the wound.
Tory DM'd me some time ago. I never like to put receipts out, but let me go ahead and just pull it
Man,
out.
free him.
I said, yo. He said, what's good? I said, how you surviving that bullshit? Wish we could have sat down before you left. I said, how are you? How you been? He said, incredible, in very high spirits and preparing to physically come home this year. I said, when? I need to come in there and get an interview, LOL. He said, I can't say exact days, but I know I'll be home this year. I said, how long you been gone? I'm so confused by your case. He said, actually, I have a crazy plan when I get back that I think you should know and be a part of, because I'm only going to do 1 interview. And he said he's been gone 2.5 years. I said, I want to be a part of that plan. He said, it's honestly a bunch of suppressed evidence that was kept away from me during trial. I said, Wack told me that, but didn't say what. He said, like, through trial, they keep saying it was inconclusive on the gun DNA, but I always knew I never touched the gun, so I asked my lawyer to retest it, and sure enough, I was 102% excluded completely from everything, just like I said. I said, well, why didn't you just say who did it? Fuck doing time for something you ain't do. He said, I took the rap for Kelsey, never wanted her to go to jail, and I never wanted Megan to get hurt or anything. So in me stopping her from getting shot, I got the raw deal. Crazy how life works. And to think they made me the poster boy for the unprotection of black women, when in all honesty, I protected 2 black women, one from getting shot and one from going to jail. Never said nothing in 8 to 10 years for them to live. It's a crazy, crazy place we live in. I said, but why you ain't just say that? Nigga, when I got shot, I told. And he said, I lost my mother at 11 years old. I couldn't sleep with myself. I was the reason for taking a mother away from her kid. I just couldn't do it. Tory Lanez.
He's better than me.
I lost my mother at 11 years old. I couldn't sleep at night, knowing I was the reason another child lost theirs. In a world that demands confessions and loves to crucify, Tory Lanez chose silence, not out of guilt, but out of sacrifice. He didn't take a plea deal. He took the pain. He let the world misunderstand him. He chose prison over betrayal. He chose loyalty over survival. And maybe the question isn't why didn't he speak? Maybe the real question is, could you do the same? Let that sit. Comment below. Would you go to prison to protect someone you love? Or would you protect yourself and live with their destruction? But before we move forward, we have to ask something deeper. Something the courtroom never questioned and the headlines never dared to explore. Why did this happen in the first place? Not the gun, not the trial, but the story before the story. If Tory Lanez truly cared for Megan, why, even privately, was he involved with her best friend? And if Kelsey was Megan's best friend, why would she ever betray that friendship, even behind closed doors? These weren't decisions made in fear. They were choices made in desire, pride, and ego. No one forced anyone to do anything. They moved by their own will, and that's the part we hate admitting. Sometimes the people we hurt are the very ones we once chose to protect. And sometimes we destroy others not because we're evil, but because we're selfish, because we want what we want, even if it leaves someone else bleeding. What happened that night wasn't just violence. It was the result of quiet decisions, emotional fractures, and the slow erosion of loyalty. And maybe that's the real tragedy here. Not the prison, not the trial, but how 3 lives collapsed under the weight of egos, secrets, and silence. This isn't just about Tory, it's a mirror, held up to all of us, because the hardest question isn't who pulled the trigger. It's why we keep aiming at the ones we love, just to protect our own reflection. As the world watched in silence, a storm was quietly building. Tory Lanez didn't cry out when he was stabbed. He didn't grant interviews. He didn't release a single emotional plea. But something changed. The silence that once made him look guilty now began to look like something else. Discipline, control, conviction. Suddenly, the silence echoed louder than any protest. Celebrities who had stayed quiet began to speak. Drake, Amber Rose, athletes, influencers. One by one, they whispered the same words, "Free Tory." And that whisper turned into a wave. Petitions passed 250,000 signatures. Media outlets that once demonized him began to double back. But this was no longer about fans and fame. It had moved beyond music. Beyond culture, this was political. Congresswoman Paulina Luna. She didn't tiptoe, she didn't sugarcoat. She stood before the country and called it what it was. This case smells like bias. Racial, procedural, constitutional, and suddenly, the courtroom wasn't the only place where Tory Lanez's name was being spoken. It was on Capitol Hill, and behind the closed doors of California's justice system, a habeas corpus motion was filed. Not a normal appeal. Not a normal appeal, a direct challenge to the legality of his imprisonment. Because if the court agrees that evidence was withheld, that the trial was biased, that the process was broken from the beginning, then Tory Lanez wouldn't just be freed, he would be vindicated. And right in the middle of this growing storm, she stepped forward. Diana, his manager, his confidant, the only person who knew the full scope of the war being fought behind closed doors. She didn't speak in anger. She spoke with assurance. Tory Lanez will be free this year, she said. Not as a hope, but as a fact. She revealed what most had no idea about, that it wasn't Megan who pressed charges. It was the DA's office. And this was never about a feud between artists. This was about a system that needed a villain, and found one in Tory. Diana said she handpicked his team strategically. People who understood the California courts, the politics behind the scenes, and the weight of fighting a machine built to bury you quietly.
You have an update for us today on the Tory Lanez case that has not been released yet.
Yes, for who I am and what I know and the system that I am involved in, Tory Lanez will be freed this year. I just want you to know that.
So Tory's getting out.
Tory is getting out. Okay?
Now hold on. So we have it here. So Tory is getting free. Do you think
Take it
it
to
could
the
be
bank.
like this summer?
It will be soon.
I'm gonna be
Haters are
honest.
gonna hate, but
Tory,
it doesn't matter. I put together this team, and I knew that when Tory was innocent, I was very strategic about the people that I put together, and I knew it was going to take people that understood California and the process there.
What do you think Megan's strongest argument that will be the hardest for, Tory's team to overcome to be freed?
This is the thing, and I'll speak for Tory on this because he has said this, and so has his father. This is not about Megan. Megan did not pursue those charges against Tory. The DA's office did. I do not villainize Megan. I wish her the best. Tory prays for her, and so does his father. Everybody's victims in this situation. Nobody has won from this. And I don't care what anyone else says. I care about what the evidence says. He is innocent.
So how is he doing now since is he recovering from the stabbing? How's he doing?
He's doing good. He's in good spirit.
Can he fully walk normal?
Yeah, he can walk normal, and he's recovering well.
Yo, he's recovering well.
Yo, he's
Imagine
a
being
beast.
stabbed that many times.
No, it is God's hand in Tory's life because Tory is mentally very strong.
So where is he staying now? Is he in a different jail or is it?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So Tory got moved to a different prison.
A whole
called
nother
Stevens,
facility.
A whole nother county. He's not even anywhere near where he was.
And is he put alone or still in general pop?
Well, he was alone before, but in general population, but he had his own cell, and now he has his own cell again.
Is there anything that Tory Lanez wants the public to know?
Well, I know what he wants the public to know. One, that he is so grateful of the support that he has from everyone. He feels it, but he wants everybody to know that Tory doesn't put his faith in people. He puts it in God. And he believes that God has put him through this journey because it's his job after this to help so many people. When he got stabbed and he was laying there and he was like, really, God? This is how you're going to take me out? He was just like, he told me, I was like, what's going through your head when this was going on?
So he was talking to God like,
yeah, he
is
was
this
like,
it?
really, God? Like, this is how you're going to take me out of all this? This is how you're going to take me out? And God said, nope. This is just going to be a part of your story.
Right.
And
He has a crazy testimony.
he has a crazy testimony. And, I hope, because of what's happened to him, I hope that he goes on to be the biggest artist of our time because he deserves it.
Tory Lanez never broke. He didn't cry out for sympathy. He didn't sell out names. He didn't beg for the public's forgiveness. He waited, he prayed, he survived. And now, for the first time in nearly 2 years, the tide is shifting. Not because the system is kind, but because it's being cornered. The habeas corpus motion is active. His legal team has laid out the flaws, suppressed evidence, ignored witnesses, a conviction based more on perception than proof. But this isn't just about overturning a sentence. It's about exposing a structure, and in the background, whispers are growing louder. Clemency, because if the courts won't act, the governor might. Political pressure is mounting. Leaders are watching. Public voices are rising. And if it all aligns, Tory Lanez could walk out not in a decade, but in a matter of months, maybe even weeks. But here's the part we can't ignore. Whether you believe he's innocent or guilty, you cannot deny what he endured. Most men would have folded and still refused to betray the people it tried to turn him against. He protected those who may never return the favor. He held his story while the world rewrote it for him, and now the silence is speaking for itself. Tory Lanez may not come back as the man they destroyed. He might return as something far more dangerous to the system, a man who outlasted the machine. This is SpaceX fame, and if this story moved you, don't let it stay buried. Like, share, comment, because silence protected others. But now the truth needs to speak.